I've always had a goal to hit 1,000 likes on a video, but you legends smashed past that and got one of my videos to over 2K likes. Let's break even more records on this video. Please smash that like button. And I want to try this one thing. I want to know who my devoted listeners are. So once you've done that, comment down below that you hit that like button hard, or even a kind message. Let's see who our loyal devoted viewers are. You know who you are. Once again, thank you guys so much. Now to these amazing stories.
I wasn't even supposed to be there that weekend. My friend Lyanna begged me to fly out to San Diego with her for some dumb influencer pop-up event she wanted to check out. I'd already booked the flights, packed everything. But then her cousin got into a car crash, and suddenly the trip was off. I was stuck at home with nothing but silence and half-eaten snacks for company. My husband, Eli, was supposed to be in Palm Springs for a business retreat with his coworkers. I didn't think much of it. He travels for work a lot. I usually use that time to deep clean, scroll way too long on TikTok, and eat cereal for dinner in bed without feeling weird about it. So when the trip got canceled, I figured, whatever, I'd just have a quiet weekend to myself. The first weird thing was a charger. I was doing laundry and went into Eli's closet to grab his dirty socks. He always kicks them off and leaves them in corners, and saw his laptop charger still coiled up on the shelf. He never forgets that thing. Ever. That man cannot go an hour without his laptop. So I texted him, "Hey, you forgot your charger. Want me to overnight it?" He replied, "Oh, thanks. But someone else brought an extra, all good." But something about it just kind of buzzed in the back of my head. Later that night, I noticed his location wasn't showing. We share locations, not in a creepy way, just for ride shares and meeting up and all that. Normally it works fine, but now it was just blank, like he turned it off. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he was just trying to unplug. That guy called for my mom. She never calls. She's more of a once-a-month text some pics kind of person. We have a weird relationship, not close but not bad either. Surface level, always has been. She said that she was having some weird stomach pain and was going to the urgent care near our house. Could I come with her? Of course I went. She was totally fine, just had a messed up smoothie or something. But while we were driving back to her place, she seemed off. Jumpy. Twitchy. She kept changing the music and fidgeting with events. I dropped her off and was halfway down her street when I realized she left her wallet in my glove compartment. I turned back. I didn't knock. I probably should have. I figured I'd just leave it on the counter like usual. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, and the first thing that hit me was the music. Loud, louder than usual. Then I heard the shower running upstairs. That's when the pit in my stomach started. I don't even know why. I left the wallet on the counter and was about to leave when I saw the shoes. Eli's shoes. He has these ugly brown sneakers he refuses to throw away. I hate them. I've joked about burning them more than once. And they were by the stairs, in my mom's house. I don't know what came over me. I walked up the stairs like I wasn't even controlling my body. The shower stopped just as I reached the top. I moved quick, heart racing, no plan. Just a sick panic crawling over me. I opened her bedroom door and I swear, everything just froze. Eli. Towel around his waist, my mom. Towel too. Hair dripping wet. They looked at me like deer in headlights. Wide eyes, mouth slightly open. And in that second, it all clicked. The way Eli always complimented her cooking, even though it tasted like chalk. The weird energy between them when we had dinner together. The late-night texts she claimed were about real estate questions. I didn't say anything. I turned around, walked back down the stairs, left the house. I drove until I couldn't see straight anymore. Pulled into an empty lot behind a grocery store and just sat there. That night, I didn't go home. I went to Lyanna's even though she was out of town. I had her spare key. She'd offered it to me months ago, and I never used it until then. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this slow, dull numbness settle into my bones. The next day, Eli texted me like nothing happened. "Hope your weekend's going okay, love you." I didn't respond. Then my mom tried to call. 5 times. I blocked her. A few days passed and Eli came home like nothing happened. I wasn't there. I'd already packed a bag and gone. I stayed at Lyanna's until I could figure out my next move. He sent me flowers. He left voicemails. He even had the nerve to write me a letter like we were in some tragic movie. But none of it mattered. The image was stuck in my head like a brand, my husband and my mother in the same damn towel. When I finally told Lyanna, she screamed louder than I'd ever heard anyone scream. No one could believe it. Even now, when I tell people, they kind of pause, like they're waiting for me to say, just kidding. But it happened. I lived it. It wasn't a dream or a movie or a TikTok story. It was real. Eblay moved out after I served him the divorce papers. He never denied it. Just kept saying he didn't mean for it to happen. Whatever that means. My mom's been trying to reach out ever since, sending long, dramatic emails about healing and forgiveness. I don't read them. I've blocked her everywhere. I don't think she understands what she destroyed. Not just a marriage, a whole life. Now I live in a tiny apartment above a bakery. It smells like sugar and yeast in the mornings, and sometimes that's the only good part of my day. The rest is just picking up the pieces, trying to feel normal again. Some days I do, some days I don't, but I never forget. Not the shoes by the stairs, not the towels, not the lip on their faces might open that door. And I never will. I honestly don't even know how it got that far. The work trip was in Vancouver. Our team had been planning the off-site for months. It was supposed to be simple. Meetings during the day, drinks at night, maybe a few hikes in between. My girlfriend Lena stayed home. We'd been together for 3 years, living in this small, overpriced apartment outside Seattle. We were stable. Not perfect, but stable. The kind of relationship where the arguments are mild and routines are easy. I'd never cheated before. Never even really thought about it. The one I met on the trip wasn't part of our company. She was in a hotel bar, sitting alone, reading something on her phone and sipping a drink. I don't know what made me talk to her. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe I just felt weird being alone in a new city. We chatted, it turned into drinks, and that turned into more. It was a one-time thing. That's what I told myself, anyway. But it wasn't. We saw each other again the next night, and the one after that. I didn't even ask her real name. She told me to call her Mia, and I didn't push for anything else. It felt separate from my real life, like a glitch that would fix itself once I got home. She was charming in a strange way. A little intense, but in the moment it didn't matter. I wasn't thinking past the next morning. When the trip ended, we didn't say goodbye. I blocked her number the second my flight landed and forced myself back into normal. I bought Lena flowers, cooked dinner, and swore I'd never mess up again. Life went on. But a few months later, things started to feel off. At first it was small. I'd come home and find the toothpaste cap off, or the bedroom light turned on when I swore I left it off. Lena would ask if I moved things or left the closet door open, and I'd laugh it off. Just forgetfulness. Nothing weird. Then I started getting texts from an unknown number. The first one just said, "Hope she liked the flowers." The second, "Your closet door is still open." There were no photos, no names, just messages. Every time I blocked the number, a new one would pop up a day or two later. They weren't threatening, just specific. Too specific. Stuff no one could know unless they'd been watching. At work, things shifted too. I'd walk into rooms and people would stop talking. One of the interns started avoiding me. My manager, Claire, gave me this weird look during our weekly one-on-one, like she knew something I didn't. I brushed it off, told myself I was overthinking. Until the email. It wasn't sent to me. It was forwarded by a coworker who thought I should know. Someone had emailed HR with a tip that I'd been acting inappropriately at a work trip. No details, no proof, just vague accusations. Enough to raise eyebrows, enough to get people whispering. I tried to track the sender. Fake address, burner account. I went back through everything I had, texts, emails, anything from Vancouver. I still had nothing on her. No last name. No socials. I deleted all the messages like an idiot, thinking that would make it disappear. Then came the kicker. A company-wide email went out introducing a new advisor working closely with our executive team. Some outside consultant to help align leadership strategy or whatever corporate phrase they used. Her photo was right there at the top of the email. It was her, Mia. Only she wasn't Mia anymore. She was listed as Marissa Hill, and she was now dating my boss. Dating him publicly, smiling next to him at company events, showing up in photos on his profile. He was obsessed with her. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't say anything to anyone. What could I say? That a woman I cheated with was now dating my boss under a fake name and had somehow infiltrated my life and was slowly making everything fall apart. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. One morning, I came into the office and my badge didn't work. I had to get buzzed in by reception. They said it was probably a tech issue, but I knew better. That same day, a file I'd been working on for 2 weeks was wiped from our shared drive. No backup. No one could explain it. I had to redo it from scratch. I started getting called into random meetings and given weird feedback about my performance. People stopped inviting me to things. I tried to talk to HR. They were polite but cold. Said they'd look into it. Nothing came from it. I even tried confronting my boss, but he just smiled and brushed me off. Said something vague about keeping personal life and work life separate. I saw her again in the hallway. She smiled, not a friendly smile, more like a challenge. She didn't say a word, just walked past me as if she belonged there. I don't know how she did it. I don't know what her real name is, where she came from, or how she found me, but she knew exactly what she was doing, and she was good at it. Everything about her was designed to unravel someone quietly, slowly, publicly. She made it so I couldn't say a thing without sounding crazy. Leah left 2 weeks ago. She didn't explain much. Just said she needed space. I don't blame her. I wouldn't believe me either. Now I live alone in a short-term rental with beige walls and flickering lights. My inbox is empty. I haven't been on a work call in days. No one said I'm fired, but I can feel it coming. Every now and then I still get a message. Different number, same tone. The last one just said, "Next time think twice." And I do, every single day. I always thought if something like this ever happened to me, I'd feel it right away. Like some instinct would kick in. I'd walk into a room and just know. I'd spot the signs. Late night texts. His phone always face down, weird little changes in his routine. But when it actually happened, it didn't feel like anything obvious. Just small things. Dumb things. John, my husband, started acting different. Not dramatic at first, just off. He stopped making coffee in the mornings. He started showering at night instead of after the gym. Said he liked sleeping clean. I figured whatever. People change their habits. I didn't read too much into it. Then he started staying later at work. Said he had new clients. I believed him. We've been married 5 years, together for 7. I trusted him. I really did. One night, I saw a message pop up on his iPad. It was sent to his phone, which he'd left charging in the bedroom. The name on the screen was Mel. The message just said, "Still thinking about last night." I stared at it for a full minute. Then another message came through. "She's not suspicious, right?" I didn't say anything that night. I waited. I checked his texts the next morning while he was in the shower. They were gone. Nothing from Mel. Not a single message. He wiped the whole thread. That's when I knew. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to know who she was. I wanted the full picture. I dug through emails, social media, anything I could find. Nothing came up. No Mel, no pictures, no traces. I ended up following him after work. Yeah, I know it sounds dramatic, but I had to see it for myself. He drove to this apartment building across town. Parked. I waited 15 minutes, then walked up and buzzed a few random units. Someone eventually let me in. I saw him through a window on the 3rd floor, sitting on a couch with her, laughing, her legs in his lap, just completely at ease. I didn't go in. I just stood there until I couldn't anymore. Then I went home. The next day, I messaged her from a burner account, told her I was John's wife, that I knew what was going on. I expected denial or guilt, maybe an apology. Instead, she replied with, "You're not his wife. You're a stalker." I remember just staring at that for a second, not even understanding what she meant. She said she'd been dating John for a year and that I was some crazy ex who kept showing up and pretending to be his wife. She said she'd already talked to the police once and that if I messaged her again, she'd file for a restraining order. At first, I thought it was just some sick defense, like maybe she was trying to cover herself. But then she started messaging my friends, my family. She found my mom's Facebook and told her I was unstable and had been harassing her and John for months. She contacted my best friend and said I was spiraling and needed help. And people started believing her. Even John didn't come clean. He went quiet, just stopped talking to me, changed his number, blocked me on everything. One day I came home and he'd taken half his stuff. No note, no explanation. Gone. I went to the police, told them everything. I showed them photos of our wedding, emails, my marriage certificate. But here's the thing, there was no record of our marriage in the state system. No official record, at least. Somehow, the certificate was missing from the registry. I'd never digitized it, never thought to scan it. The paper copy was gone too. I kept it in a drawer in our bedroom, and it just wasn't there anymore. Our joint accounts, closed. My name removed from everything. It was like I never existed in his life. I tried contacting his job. They said they couldn't give me any information. Tried reaching out to mutual friends, but they either ignored me or said they didn't want to get involved. Even my own family was confused, saying things like maybe I misunderstood, maybe he never legally filed the paperwork. But I did. I know I did. I started keeping everything. Screenshots, notes, dates, because at this point I didn't even know what was real anymore. It felt like she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, and John had either helped her or gotten played worse than I did. I started digging into her. I found out her name wasn't Mel, or at least not just Mel. She used different last names across different profiles. Different versions of the same face with slight changes. I'd find her commenting under one name on a dog rescue page, and then under another name on some corporate account. Same photos, same dog, different bios. It was like chasing smoke. Eventually, I found an old Reddit thread. Someone warning about a woman who dated their brother, then convinced him his family was abusive, cut them off, and disappeared with his money. They posted screenshots. It was her. Different name, same face. It wasn't just me. She'd done this before. By then, John was living with her. My name wasn't on the lease. I had no legal ties left. I tried going back to our old place, and the landlord said the lease had been terminated and a new tenant had already moved in. I stood outside that building for almost an hour, trying to figure out how everything unraveled so fast. Now I live in a furnished sublet with flickering lights and a broken heater. I'm still trying to rebuild everything. My credit, my documents, my mind. Every now and then, I'll get a text from a new number. Always something vague. Something that makes it clear she's still watching. She didn't just steal my husband. She erased me. It started with the lights. I'd be watching something late at night, and they'd flicker for a second, then turn off completely. At first, I thought it was a glitch, some kind of update or bug with the smart system we installed last year. We had the whole house connected. Smart lights, thermostat, door locks, cameras, voice assistant. Everything synced up and voice controlled. It was my girlfriend's idea. She was obsessed with the setup, always talking about how easy it made things, how futuristic it felt. But then the thermostat started acting weird too. It would suddenly crank itself up in the middle of the night. I'd wake up sweating and see that it was set to 85 degrees, or freezing cold like 60 for no reason. I'd check the app and it would say no one made changes, even though I definitely hadn't touched it. I still didn't think much of it. Maybe the system was glitching. Maybe we needed a software update. Then Alexa started saying stuff. Not normal things, not the weather or timers, just random voice messages out of nowhere. One time I was brushing my teeth and it played a recording in my own voice. I had no memory of saying those words, but it was clearly me talking about what I was doing on a night I told my girlfriend I was working late. That's when I started getting freaked out. I didn't say anything to her. I figured if it was some kind of prank, she'd drop it eventually. But it didn't stop. I'd come home and the garage wouldn't open. I'd stand there waiting, hitting the button, and it would just sit there. But the second I'd start walking back to my car, it would open on its own. At night, I'd hear whispers coming through the speakers in the living room. No music, no alerts, just low, faint sounds, like someone breathing close to a mic. I started feeling like I was losing it. The weirdest part was how my girlfriend never mentioned anything. She acted like everything was fine. Same routines, same conversations. Nothing seemed off with her. If she knew something, she was hiding it really well. One day I came home early from work. She was supposed to be out with a friend, and I wanted to try resetting the entire system to factory settings. I had the admin access. At least I thought I did. but when I tried logging into the hub, it said the password was changed. All the device names were different too. The lights were renamed things like Good Boy Spotlight and Guilt Lamp. It felt like someone was messing with me on purpose. I tried checking the security camera footage. Gone. Every clip older than 48 hours was deleted, and when I looked at the storage, it said it was being backed up to a private cloud I didn't have access to. That was the first time I really felt it. This wasn't random. Someone was doing this to me, on purpose. And it was her. I don't know how long she'd been planning it. Weeks? Months? All I know is she had full control of this system. She must have set it up that way from the start. Everything I thought I was managing was fake access, like a dummy account with just enough control to make me think I was in charge. She'd been watching me, recording me. She had everything. Every conversation, every phone call, every moment in that house where I thought I was alone. And yeah, I cheated. Once. It was a coworker, and it was stupid and impulsive, and I regretted it the second it happened. But she already knew. She knew before I even got home that night. She had footage, audio, timestamps, all of it. She had enough to tear my life apart. But she didn't confront me. She played it slow. She wanted me to unravel, to second-guess myself, to wonder if I was losing my mind. And it worked. For weeks, I barely slept. I kept resetting the router, checking outlets, searching the house for hidden cameras. I even made an appointment with a doctor because I thought something was wrong with my head. Then the court date came. I didn't even know she filed anything until a letter showed up. She was suing for damages, emotional distress, and full ownership of the house. She'd already moved most of her stuff out, and when I got to the hearing, she walked in calm, confident, holding a hard drive in one hand like it was a trophy. She showed them everything. Clips of me lying, recordings from Alexa where I admitted stuff in passing, screenshots of conversations I thought were deleted, GPS logs from the smart system showing my location history. She even had audio of me and the other girl in the house. I don't even know where she put that mic. The judge didn't even look at me twice. She won. She got everything. And now I live in a short-term rental with regular light switches and a cheap heater that barely works. No smart tech, no apps, just silence. And every time I hear a voice assistant in a commercial or a friend's place, I feel this tightness in my chest. She didn't just catch me cheating. She built a digital prison around me. And I never saw it coming. I never thought moving to this quiet neighborhood would end up like this. You know the type, rows of knee houses, white picket fences, freshly mowed lawns. Everyone pretending their lives are perfect. Like one of the suburban dreams you see in movies where nothing bad ever happens, and everyone has just enough privacy to keep their secrets safe. I thought it was exactly the fresh start I needed. My husband and I had been stuck in a rut for years. Work was monotonous, weekends were predictable, and the spark between us felt more like an old, dimming candle in a flame. The excitement was gone, and with 2 kids and busy schedules, life felt like a never-ending loop of routine. So when we found this quiet street with its manicured lawns and friendly smiles, I thought maybe here I could find something new. Maybe even find myself again. Then the new neighbor moved in. He was the kind of man you notice immediately. Tall, with a relaxed confidence that seemed effortless. He smiled like he meant it, easy and warm. And when he said your name, it was like he'd known you forever, even if you just met 5 minutes ago. I don't know why, but something about him drew me in. Maybe it was the loneliness creeping in, or the desperation to feel something again besides exhaustion and indifference. Whatever it was, I started spending more time around him. We'd chat over the fence in the mornings while the kids were getting ready for school. Coffee in hand, the sun rising behind us. His stories were captivating. Little details that made the mundane feel alive again. Some afternoons, we have a drink on his porch, laughing about nothing and everything all at once. It wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, but it happened anyway. At first, it was just harmless fun. Flirty texts I sent while my husband was at work. Little stolen moments that made me feel like I wasn't completely invisible. But the excitement spiraled into something more. Secret meetings, whispered conversations. The thrill of sneaking around was intoxicating. I wasn't proud, not one bit, but with him, I felt free, like I could breathe again, like I wasn't just mom or wife, but someone alive. Then the messages started. It began with a video. No number, no message, just a short clip sent to my phone. My heart dropped the moment I pressed play. It was me, laughing on our back porch with him. The camera angle was from inside our kitchen window. I froze. The blood drained from my face. How had someone been watching? I deleted the video immediately and told him I was done. I thought that would be the end. But it wasn't. The messages kept coming. More videos, pictures, all of them taken without my knowledge. Every smile, every touch, every secret moment captured and sent as a warning. Each message came with a chilling note: stop, or I'll send everything to your husband. Everything you thought you could keep buried. That's when the truth hit me. He had been watching us, watching my family, watching my husband and me for years, he said. He picked me out like a predator waiting in the shadows, patient and precise. The idea made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but there was no escape. I tried to cut off all contact, but the man was relentless. He showed up when I least expected it, always with that same unnerving smile, like he owned the street, like I was his prize. It wasn't just about me anymore. He knew things I hadn't even told him, probably learned from watching my husband, watching our home, our lives. I was trapped, but this wasn't just blackmail. It was a sick, twisted game. And then the worst part, my husband. I never thought he'd know. I expected anger or denial. But no, he acted like he was playing along, like he knew everything and wasn't bothered. Sometimes he'd make weird comments, little jabs about things only someone who'd seen the videos could know, but he never confronted me, never demanded explanations or threw accusations. It felt like a trap inside a trap. I started watching them both, my husband and the neighbor, like they shared some secret code, some unspoken agreement. The neighbor would show up in our yard, and my husband would smile and nod like they were partners in something dark. It made me question everything. Was I the fool? The pawn? Or was I something worse? One night, I found a small camera hidden inside the living room lamp. I almost threw up. There were dozens of them scattered throughout the house, some cleverly disguised, others brazenly visible. The thought of every private moment, every intimate conversation, recorded and set off like some sick show broke something inside me. The neighbor's voice haunted me, though I never heard it directly. Messages appeared on my phone like shadows. Keep going or lose everything. Your family's dirty secrets will come out. I didn't know what secrets he meant, but the threat was enough to freeze me in place. My husband, he stayed silent. That cold smile. The look like he was playing a game I wasn't invited to. It wasn't just cheating anymore. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Two men watching, waiting, pulling the strings while I was stuck in the middle, powerless. And honestly, I don't know who was worse, the neighbor who chose me like a target or my husband who seems to be in on it. Either way, I'm caught in something so twisted it's hard to even tell where the story begins and a horror ends. Now I'm just waiting. Waiting for the next message, the next video, the next secret to come out. Because I know they're watching. And whatever they want, I don't think it's over yet. I never thought one stupid night could mess up everything. You think about how one choice, one moment, can change the entire course of your life. I wish I could go back and make a different choice, but I can't. All I can do is live with what happened and try to survive what's coming next. It started like any other weekend. I just wanted to forget I had a wife. Not because I hated her, well, maybe a little, but mostly because things had been cold between us for months. Work was stressful, she was distant, and I guess I was looking for a way out without actually leaving. I'd come home late, she'd be tired and silent, and somehow the distance between us grew wider every day. I stopped trying to fix it. Instead, I started hoping for distraction. So there I was at this dive bar downtown, just nursing a drink, hoping no one would notice I was alone. The kind of place where the lights are too dim and the music is too loud for real conversation. I wasn't trying to meet anyone. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I just wanted to drown out the noise in my head. Then she walked in. She wasn't the usual crowd. There was something about her that made me look twice. Bright eyes, confident smile, like she knew exactly what she was doing and didn't care what anyone thought. I don't know why I talked to her. Maybe it was the way she laughed, a laugh so genuine it felt like an invitation. Or maybe I just wanted to feel alive again for the first time in months. Either way, before I knew it, we were leaving together. The hotel was cheap but decent. I barely remember the walk from the bar to the lobby. We didn't say much, but when she slipped into the room, it felt like the night had its own rhythm, dark and quick, pulsing with a reckless kind of freedom. I'm not proud of what happened. I told myself it was just a one-time thing, a way to wipe out the stress that had been building for months. Morning came fast. I woke up to a weird coldness, like someone had switched off the heat. The room felt unfamiliar and too quiet. And then I saw her lying on the bed, motionless, pale as a sheet. I froze, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Panic hit me like a truck. I shook her, called her name, but she didn't move. I scrambled for my phone, for anything that could explain what was happening. That's when it hit me. There was no record of her checking in. The receptionist had no memory of her, no sign in the logs. The hotel security cameras showed nothing. No footage of her arriving or leaving. It was like she had never existed. I started to panic harder. How was she here? Who was she? Why was she dead? It felt like a bad movie, but this was real, and I was stuck in the middle of it. For days after that nightmare, I thought about turning myself in, but I was terrified. I didn't know what the police would say, if they'd believe me, or what they'd do when they found out the truth. And then the texts started. Anonymous messages showing clips from the hotel's security cameras, me walking in with her, sitting in the bed, everything. They had proof I was there. Not only that, but there were photos on my phone, screenshots of texts between me and her from the night before. Someone was watching me, following me, controlling everything. The blackmail wasn't subtle. They wanted money, sure, but more than that, I think they wanted power. Control. I had no idea who it was. Then a name popped into my head, my wife. At first, I thought it was crazy. Why would she do this? I thought we were drifting apart, not plotting a nightmare. But then the pieces started falling into place. She knew I was unhappy. She knew I was slipping away. Maybe she wanted to catch me. Or maybe it was something darker. I tried to reach her, but she was colder than ever. No sympathy, no anger, just quiet. She wasn't surprised by the texts or the blackmail. I found out she'd been asking questions about me at work, digging into my phone records, sometimes following me. The woman in the hotel wasn't random. She was someone my wife had found hired to trap me. Then it got worse. My wife didn't want the cops involved. She said it would ruin everything, but her eyes didn't look worried about me. It looked calculating, like this whole thing was some game she was playing, a game I didn't even know the rules to yet, and I was the only piece on the board. I realized the blackmail wasn't just about money or punishment. It was about breaking me down, stripping away my pride, my control, my sense of self. She wanted me desperate, vulnerable, begging for mercy. I didn't know why, but it felt like she was preparing for something bigger, something I couldn't even imagine. Living with that fear, the secret hanging over my head, changed everything. I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every shadow in the house looked like a threat. I kept thinking about what would happen if I messed up, if I didn't pay, if I told someone, if I tried to run. I started watching her too, trying to see what her next move would be, but she stayed calm, like nothing was wrong, like she was already 10 steps ahead. Then I found out about the cameras. Not just in the hotel room. She planted them everywhere. Hidden in the living room lamp, tucked into the smoke detector, even in the car. She was watching me all the time, not just waiting for me to slip up, but making sure she never missed a thing. The weirdest part, she never mentioned the woman from the hotel, like she wasn't real, but I knew she was, and I had the proof, even if no one else did. I felt like I was trapped in my own life, living someone else's nightmare. I didn't know if I was a victim or a fool, or maybe both. All I knew was this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Now I'm still here, waiting, watching, trying not to lose myself. Because in this game my wife started, I'm the one with the most to lose, and she's not going to stop until she gets everything she wants. I always thought I was the kind of person who knew when someone was lying. You live with someone for years, share your life, your secrets, your worst days, and your best, and somehow you develop this sixth sense. The little tells, the way they glance at their phone just a bit too quickly, the way their stories don't quite line up, the sudden changes in routine that seem too deliberate to be innocent. When I started feeling like something was off with him, I wanted to convince myself it was nothing. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was just being paranoid, but deep down I knew better. The doubts gnawed at me until I couldn't ignore them. I didn't want to confront him blindly, not without proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I created a fake profile online. It wasn't complicated, just a girl who seemed believable enough. New to town, with a few casual photos that weren't too polished, some random interests I pulled from old conversations he had about people he used to know. Nothing flashy or attention-grabbing. I named her Emily. She was my creation, my trap. At first, it was just about watching. I scrolled through his messages, waiting, hoping for a slip-up. And then it happened. He sent a message to Emily. Just a simple, hey. But that one word broke the dam. From there, the conversations got messier, flirty texts, casual chats that felt loaded with more meaning than he let on. It wasn't just curiosity or boredom for him. He was invested. I could feel it in every line he typed, the way his words changed when he thought no one else was watching. I told myself I was doing this to protect myself, to find out the truth without causing a scene or destroying what little we had left. But things spiraled out of control faster than I expected. He started talking about meeting Emily in person, making plans like they were old friends or something more. Every time I saw those words pop up, my chest tightened, a mix of rage and heartbreak I couldn't ignore. I hated what I was doing, how invasive it felt, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know. I needed to face it. Then came the day I decided to confront him. I wanted to catch him red-handed, force him to see how wrong he was, make him admit it all. I sent him a message as Emily, pretending to want to meet just like he wanted. When he agreed, I was ready. I felt a mix of dread and anger as I said the time and place, rehearsing what I'd say. But when I finally told him I knew everything, that it was Emily, that I'd seen all the messages, his reaction wasn't what I expected. He didn't apologize or deny it nervously. He denied it flat out with this calm, almost smug smile. Said it was all misunderstanding, that I was imagining things, that maybe I was just projecting my own insecurities onto him. I showed her the messages, the dates, the plans. Nothing fazed him. He just smiled, like I was a crazy one, like he'd been waiting for me to come after him and was already 3 steps ahead, playing a darker game I hadn't even realized existed. After that confrontation, things got worse in ways I hadn't imagined. I started noticing little things, tiny cracks that made my skin crawl. My phone would act weird, texts disappearing or being read before I could see them. Strange calls that went unanswered, but left that eerie silence. He grew distant, but not in the way I expected. Not cold or angry. Calm, too calm. Like he was in control and enjoying watching me spiral. It was like living with a stranger who knew all my secrets but was playing me for a fool. I tried to dig deeper to find something concrete, but every step I took felt like I was walking into a trap. He started turning my own moves against me. When I accused him, he flipped it, making me apologize, making me question myself. It was like he was rewriting the story in real time, making me doubt my own mind and memories. Then one night, I saw a notification on Emily's account that wasn't mine. Someone else had logged in. That's when it hit me. He had found out it was me all along. And now he was playing his own game. I don't know exactly what his plan is, but it terrifies me. He's using Emily to twist the truth to paint me as the villain. Friends started asking if I was okay. Family began to pull away. People whispered, wondering if I was losing it. And me. I'm the one losing everything. I created a fake person to catch a liar, and now I'm trapped in a lie I can't escape. It's a nightmare where I'm the only one who sees the truth, but no one believes me. Sometimes I catch him watching me, a flicker of amusement in his eyes, like this whole thing is a game only he knows how to play, and I'm just a piece to be moved and discarded. Every time I try to push back, it feels like he's 10 steps ahead controlling the board. The more I dig, the more tangled I get, like quicksand pulling me under. The worst part is that I'm starting to lose myself in it all. I don't know what's real anymore. Is this just paranoia? Am I making mountains out of molehills? The doubt he planted is growing like a weed in my mind. Every message, every silence, every look between us is loaded with unspoken threats and gamesmanship. I'm terrified of what I'll find if I keep looking, but I can't stop. And honestly, I'm not sure if I want to win. Because winning means exposing everything, destroying what's left of us, and maybe losing myself completely in the process. And now he was playing his own game. I don't know exactly what his plan is, but it terrifies me. He'd using Emily to twist the truth, to paint me as a villain. Friends started asking if I was okay. Family began to pull away. People whispered, wondering if I was losing it. And me? I'm the one losing everything. I created a fake person to catch a liar, and now I'm trapped in a lie I can't escape. It's a nightmare where I'm the only one who sees the truth, but no one believes me. Sometimes I catch him watching me, a flicker of amusement in his eyes, like this whole thing is a game only he knows how to play, and I'm just a piece to be moved and discarded. Every time I try to push back, it feels like he's 10 steps ahead, controlling the board. The more I dig, the more tangled I get, like quicksand pulling me under. The worst part is that I'm starting to lose myself in it all. I don't know what's real anymore. Is this just paranoia? Am I making mountains out of molehills? The doubt he planted is growing like a weed in my mind. Every message, every silence, every look between us is loaded with unspoken threats and gamesmanship. I'm terrified of what I'll find if I keep looking, but I can't stop. And honestly, I'm not sure if I want to win. Because winning means exposing everything, destroying what's left of us, and maybe losing myself completely in the process. I never thought I'd find out that the person I trusted the most was living a completely different life right under my nose. Like I knew something was off, but not this. Not a whole other existence that I had zero clue about. It started with small things, the kind you brush off because you don't want to be the paranoid girlfriend. He'd sometimes be unreachable for hours with his phone on silent. He was working late a lot, which was weird because he wasn't even in a job that required that. Then I found out his phone wasn't just one, it was two. I saw it by accident. He left a bag in my apartment when he was rushing out, and I'd noticed a second phone that wasn't his usual one. It wasn't locked with the same pattern or password. When I tried to ask, he shrugged it off, said it was for work stuff. I didn't buy it, but figured I'd wait and see. I wish I hadn't. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I stayed over at his place and found the second phone in the drawer. No password, which surprised me. I started scrolling through messages and apps, pretending that I was just checking for a notification, but everything fell off. There were chats with girls I didn't know, some screenshots of conversations I wasn't part of, and even a bunch of photos, some from a place I'd never been to. Then I saw it. A fake social media profile. He was using a different name, a different face, but the pictures were his, just edited enough to not be obvious. I started going through the posts and pictures, and it hit me. He had a whole other life online. I wasn't just a girl in his life. I was one of many. The fake profile showed him hanging out in a different part of the city, living in an apartment I'd never been to with other girls he dated. It was like a secret diary of lies, and every post screamed betrayal. I didn't know where to start. I found receipts for dinners and gifts I never got, dates that matched times he told me he was working late. There were even hotel bills from places near that other apartment. My stomach turned with every new thing I uncovered. I tried to tell myself maybe it was just some weird side thing. Maybe he wasn't serious with any of them. But then I found messages that were way too personal. Complaints from one girl about how he disappeared for days. Texts from another asking why she couldn't meet up anymore. He'd been cheating for years, and I was completely blind. One afternoon, I decided to check out that other apartment. I drove across town, heart pounding like crazy. When I got there, the door was slightly open. I peeked inside and saw evidence. Things that belonged to him, photos of the two of them taped to the fridge, and a bunch of his clothes in the closet. It was all so real. I didn't know if I wanted to scream, cry, or run away. I was trapped in this twisted nightmare where everything I believed about us was fake. He was living a double life, and I was the last to find out. When I finally confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he acted like I was crazy for even questioning him. Said the other phone was for work, the other apartment was a friend's place, and the social media stuff was just for fun. I had the receipts, the photos, the messages, all proof. But he was so smooth, so practiced. It was like I was the one losing my mind. Living with that kind of betrayal changed me. I started checking his phones, following him sometimes, trying to catch him slipping. But he was always one step ahead. It was like he wanted me to be suspicious but never have enough proof to leave. I felt like I was stuck in this endless loop of lies. Even my friends noticed I was different. I wasn't the same bubbly girl they knew. I was quieter, more tense, always watching. But when I told them what I found, some didn't believe me. They said maybe I was reading too much into it, or maybe he was stressed. But I knew better. I saw the receipts, the messages, the life he kept hidden. The worst part is knowing he probably did this to more people before me and might do it again after. He was a master at pretending, at hiding pieces of himself like they weren't real. But they were, and I was living proof. Now, every time I think about him, I think about the other phone, the fake profile, and that apartment. It's like a dark secret tattooed onto my memory, a reminder that sometimes the person you think you know is just a stranger wearing a mask. I don't know what I'm going to do next. The truth is out, but it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like a trap I walked into. And the worst part is knowing he probably enjoyed watching me fall for it all. I didn't think things would get this messed up when I cheated. Honestly, I thought I was being careful, like I had everything under control. You know how it goes, the late nights, the quick texts, the secret meetings, but I thought I was smart enough to keep it all under wraps. I convinced myself that it was just a fling, something I could handle without anyone ever finding out. But then the packages started showing up, and that illusion shattered. It all kicked off a few weeks after that night with her, the woman I was stupid enough to think I could keep on the side without anyone noticing. At work on my desk sat a plain brown envelope with no return address. I didn't open it right away, tried to shrug it off as a prank or some weird coincidence. But curiosity won. Inside I found photos, clear as day. Me with her. Not blurry, not accidental shots taken from a distance. Someone had been watching us. Watching me. I tried to laugh it off, hoping it was some jealous coworker or a bad joke. Maybe she found out and wanted to mess with me. I shoved the photos in my desk drawer and told myself it would end there. But it didn't. The second package arrived at home, and that's when it got seriously creepy. It wasn't just photos this time. It was a small, familiar object, a paperweight from our own living room. I recognized it instantly. My wife had always treasured that thing, and I'd never given it much thought. But holding it in my hands, knowing it had been taken from our house, made my stomach twist in ways I hadn't expected. How had whoever was doing this gotten inside? Or had they just stolen it somehow without me noticing? That was the moment I realized this wasn't some random act. This was personal. The third package came with a handwritten letter, and this one hit deeper than anything else. It contained details about me no one could possibly know, things I had never told anyone, not even my closest friends. Dark secrets, the kind of things you bury so deep inside that even you try not to think about them. The letter wasn't just a warning. It was proof that whoever was behind this knew me better than I knew myself. Panic set in. I started connecting the dots, the photos, the stolen object, the personal letter, and the answer was clear. It had to be her, my wife. But it wasn't just some emotional reaction. She had mentioned once, months ago, hiring a private investigator because she was suspicious of my late nights and odd behavior. At the time, I laughed it off, told myself she was just being paranoid. Now I wished I hadn't. The detective wasn't just watching. She was hunting, waiting for the right moment to pull me apart piece by piece. Every package was a message, a reminder that I was trapped. The one I thought I was fooling wasn't just hurt. She was calculating, smarter, darker than I ever imagined. From then on, I lived in constant fear. Every time I left the house, my heart pounded like I was about to get caught. Work was no longer a sanctuary. My desk, once a place where I felt in control, became a reminder of how exposed I was. The doorbell ringing made me jump like a guilty criminal. Sleep deserted me, replaced by a cold, creeping dread that someone was always watching, following me, waiting for me to slip up. One night, when I finally crawled into bed exhausted, I found another letter on my pillow. This one was longer, more detailed. It read like a confession, but it was from her, the real her, the wife I'd broken without even realizing. She wrote about how she'd been gathering evidence, not just to catch me cheating, but to make me pay for everything I'd done. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about revenge. I wasn't just a cheater. I was a destroyer of lives, and she was going to make sure I felt every ounce of the pain I caused. What shocked me most was how silent she'd been through all this. No yelling, no fights, no dramatic confrontations. It was like she vanished, leaving behind a ghost, a detective playing a cold, cruel game I didn't even know I was a part of. I thought about running, moving somewhere new, starting over with a clean slate. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't end it. The detective was everywhere, at work, in our home, even in places I thought were private. Every package was a piece of my own life torn apart and sent back to me like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I don't know what she wants now. Maybe it's revenge. Maybe it's evidence for some legal battle I don't even know about. Or maybe she just wants to remind me every day that I'm not as clever as I thought. Whatever it is, I'm not safe. Not really. The strangest part, I don't even want to be safe. This twisted game she's playing, this slow dismantling of my life, it's terrifying. But in some warped way, it feels like the only thing keeping me awake, keeping me real. I'm caught in this nightmare of my own making, and I don't know how to wake up. I'd never thought a little slip up could snowball into a full on nightmare. But here I am, stuck in a mess that's way beyond what I ever imagined. It all started when I thought I could get away with it. The affair of the secret meetings, the late nights that I convinced myself were just harmless fun. I wasn't stupid, or so I thought. I believed I was careful enough, discreet enough to keep everything hidden. But turns out, someone was watching. And not just watching, they were waiting. Our neighborhood is small but chill, the kind of place where everyone keeps to themselves and life feels safe. A place where you leave your doors unlocked, trust your neighbors to look after your home when you're gone. Except it wasn't safe. Not really. Because right under my nose was this neighbor, some guy I barely talked to, the kind of guy who kept to himself but had this aura of quiet control. I always noticed his house had cameras everywhere. On the front porch, the driveway, even inside through the windows. I figured maybe he was just super security conscious, or maybe he was one of those paranoid types who thought the world was out to get him. I never paid much attention. The first time I found out how much he was watching was the worst moment of my life. I was at home one evening scrolling through my phone when a message popped up from his number. No introduction, no greeting, just a short, chilling line. I've seen everything. I stared at it, heart pounding, then clicked the link he sent. The screen loaded a grainy video feed. Images of me in clear as day, sneaking out late at night, slipping into a car with a guy I've been seeing behind my partner's back. There was no mistaking it. He had proof, and he was watching every move I made. I wanted to laugh it off. Maybe it was a mistake, a prank, or some elaborate joke. But then the messages kept coming. At first, they were just warnings. Be careful, you're not as hidden as you think. But then the tone shifted. Suddenly, strange things started happening around me. My social media accounts began acting weird. Posts I swore I never made disappeared without explanation. Messages were sent from my profiles to people I barely knew, messages that sounded strange or out of character. People I considered friends started avoiding me or giving me cold looks when I walked into a room. Family members grew distant, like they were hearing stories about me I didn't know. The world I knew was flipping upside down, and I was helpless to stop it. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. The neighbor wasn't satisfied with simply watching. He was using what he knew to break me down piece by piece. I found out later that he'd somehow hacked into my online accounts, email, social media, even my phone. He was posting fake stories, sending messages that made me look like the bad guy in every situation imaginable. Rumors started to spread, whispers and half-truths that I couldn't explain away. People who had trusted me began to doubt me. It was like he was rewriting my entire life story, making me the villain no matter what I did. At first, I tried to fight back. I changed passwords, installed new security software, confronted the neighbor directly. But every time I thought I'd gotten ahead, he was already one step ahead of me. It was exhausting, like running a race where the finish line kept moving farther away. My phone buzzed constantly, strange calls from unknown numbers, texts with cryptic threats or taunts. Every time I opened my social media, there was something new. Photos I never took, comments I never wrote, all designed to ruin me. Then he started showing up in places I went, quietly, always blending in. At the cafe where I met friends, at the gym, even near my office. I caught glimpses of him slipping into conversations, whispering lies, planting doubts in people's minds. I saw the shift in their eyes when they thought I wasn't watching, the way their expressions changed from friendly to suspicious. It was like I was trapped inside a horror story where the villain knew every move I'd make before I even thought about it. The breaking point came when I accidentally stumbled on a folder on his computer, screenshots and recordings he'd taken over months. There were pictures of me at all hours, videos of me talking to my secret lover, and screenshots of every message I sent or received. But worse than that, there were detailed notes about my habits, my friends, my family. He wasn't just punishing me for cheating. He was obsessed with tearing apart every piece of my life with surgical precision. I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe the truth was buried somewhere beneath all the chaos he created. Was I really as innocent as I wanted to believe? Or had I become so tangled in lies and mistakes that even I didn't recognize myself anymore? But deep down, I knew the worst thing wasn't what I'd done. The worst thing was how this guy had taken control of everything I cared about. It was like I was a character in a game I never signed up for, and the rules were designed just to crush me. Every day felt heavier. I stopped going out, stopped posting anything online. I avoided my friends, knowing they might already heard the lies or been turned against me. Even at home, where I should have felt safe, I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what he was doing right this second. The neighbor's shadow hung over every corner of my life. And the worst part, no one seemed to notice the real monster behind it all. Everyone was focused on the damage I'd done, the secrets I'd tried to hide. But the guy orchestrating it all, he stayed in the background, calm and untouchable. Just me stuck in this trap with no way out. I don't know how long this will last. I don't know if I'll ever get my life back. But right now, all I feel is fear. Fear that the walls are closing in, that every secret I've tried to bury is about to be dragged into the light by someone who's been watching all along. And honestly, I never thought I'd be so scared of someone just living next door. I never imagined touching down in Seoul would feel so surreal. After 10 months in the desert, I'd been picturing smooth reunions and her smile lighting up the baggage claim. Instead, the city heat pressed down like a weight on my chest. I marched through customs thinking about Emily's texts, her jokes about how I'd fallen off the face of the earth, and how she couldn't wait to show me our new apartment. I was ready to step into the next chapter of our lives together, until she dropped the bomb. She told me she was pregnant. In that moment, the world sprang to a screeching halt. My heart stuttered. This was supposed to be the best news ever, except the dates didn't add up. I'd been gone for 10 months, and she said her due date was less than 9 months away. Simple math, but somehow I had to be the one to point it out. She looked at me with those big brown eyes full of fear, told me prenatal tracking can be off, that it could still be mine. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to cling to every word. But something deep inside me started to whisper that this wasn't right. We moved into that cramped one-bedroom not 5 days after I got back. It was on the 3rd floor of a rundown building in Gangnam. Walls with peeling paint, narrow hallways smelling of instant noodles and stale coffee. But it was ours, or so I thought. I'd spent hours helping her paint the living room mint green, imagining a nursery in the corner with tiny shoes lined up. Now every stroke with that brush felt like a mark against me. Emily fell into routines that screamed secrecy. She'd get calls from someone saved as Jay, then slip out to meet him. She said she was grabbing snacks, topping up her phone plan, but she'd always vanish for hours, reappearing with lipstick smudge and eyes bright. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. That deployment had made me jittery and slept through most of it. I landed back on Korean time, waiting at 3 a.m. for no reason, scrolling through my phone until dawn. One morning, I saw tagged photos of Emily and Lee, my brother. They were in Hongdae, holding hands, laughing like teenagers. My brother Lee was supposed to be my anchor, the one guy I could trust to have my back. He was in his 2nd year at university, living that late-night ramen life, always texting how much he missed hanging out. One night, we sat over soju and grilled pork, trading stories about my time in the sand and his latest crush. When I asked if he was seeing someone, he shrugged like it was no big deal. I didn't press. Brothers lie about crushes. But later, when I matched the dates, Emily's messages and Lee's alleged camping trip, I realized they'd been hooking up under my nose. I followed her once. It felt wrong, like betraying my own morals, but I needed proof. She took the bus to Mapogu, and I tailed her on foot, keeping a safe distance. At a flickering street lamp, Lee was waiting, arms open. They met with that familiar hug, a kiss pressed to her temple. They slipped into that convenience store like it was their private world. I watched from the shadows, the neon payphones buzzing behind me. That image seared into my brain. The way Emily's cheek pressed against Lee's shoulder, how he squeezed her hand. I confronted her the next evening in our apartment while she was microwaving instant bulgogi. I stood by the fridge, where our photos still hung, and asked if Lee was the father. She didn't deny it. She sighed, shrugged, and said it just happened, that she'd felt so alone, and Lee had been there. She said something like, "When you left, I needed someone." Her voice cracked, tears spilling over, but nothing in that moment felt genuine. I had believed in our future, the trips we'd take, the baby names we'd pick, the nursery with a pastel wall. All of it dissolved on her shaking shoulders. Lee tried to reach me afterward. He left voicemails with apologies, saying he didn't mean for it to go this far, begging for forgiveness. I deleted his texts unread, blocked his number. I thought about answering, but every memory of our childhood, building forts, playing catch, now tasted like betrayal. How could I share my deepest trust with someone who'd stolen it? After that, I packed a bag in a single night. I left behind that apartment with its mint green living room and its empty crib corner. I found a tiny studio in Iwamural village, walls plastered with street art. The landlords were artists who left spray paint cans on the shelf for decoration. I painted one wall myself in bright orange, a slapdash statement of "I'm still here." I filled the place with my own pictures, snapshots from sandy barracks, a sunrise over dusty plains, friends who wrote letters that smelled like home. I refused to let Emily's lies define me. Days blurred into weeks. I threw myself into freelance gigs, writing for a travel blog, interviewing expats who'd built lives here. At night, I walked through alleys with murals of flowers and dragons, letting the city's chaos drown out my thoughts. Sometimes I'd recognize the sidewalk cafe where they'd met and keep walking without looking up. The pain throbbed in my chest, but it receded with every step. I saw Emily once more on a bus stop billboard for prenatal vitamins. Her face was radiant in the ad, hand on belly, eyes closed. It felt surreal, like staring into an alternate timeline. I turned away, not wanting to mar the memory with my bitterness. Instead, I grabbed a street taco, neon orange cheese dripping, and ate it hot on a bench. Eventually, I drafted an email to her, short and to the point. "I'm keeping my distance. I'm reclaiming my life." I didn't expect a reply, and none came. That silence was his own answer. One morning, I found a note slid under my door, written in Emily's handwriting. "I'm sorry it doesn't cover this, but I wanted you to know who the father is. Good luck." I crumpled it and tossed it in the alley behind my building. Good luck indeed. Now, mornings in Sewell feel quieter. I'd brew instant coffee, stare out of the tiled rooftops, and plan my days. I'm rebuilding trust in friends, in myself. The memory of Emily and Lee still flickers at the edge of my mind, warning I carry. But I'm choosing to keep moving forward in a city that never stops. Betrayal taught me who not to be, and every sunrise teaches me who I want to become. There's no neat closure, no lesson learned banner at the end. Just me, waking up, painting walls, eating street food, and believing I'm more than someone's mistake. The cracks in my heart are still there, but through them, I can let new light in. I never thought the worst night of my life would start in our own kitchen. The air smelled like burnt toast and late night worry. I just lost the pregnancy, and Jason was pacing back and forth, tossing aside empty coffee mugs. I stared at the cradle we barely assembled, its pieces still in boxes on the floor. His shoulders were tight, jaw clenched, and I didn't recognize the guy standing in front of me. He grabbed his keys and said he needed some air, but that night stretched for hours without him. He came back hours later, eyes swollen, and sat across from me in that cramped breakfast nook we painted yellow together. I asked if he was okay. He murmured, "I just had to see her." I thought you met me, but the way he kept glancing at the door made me freeze. His phone buzzed, and he stepped outside to answer it. Through the window, I saw him leaning toward the porch railing, whispering softly. I didn't know my own heart could feel that empty. The next day, Jason slipped into a routine of late nights and quick exits. He said he was working on a project, but every time he left, his truck lights faded down the street toward my mother's house. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Miscarriages can do that to you. Mess with your head, make you see shadows where none exist. I tried to throw myself into the stack of bills on the counter, the dishes piled in the sink, anything to feel normal again. Then one morning, I found his toothbrush in my mom's bathroom. My mother lived 2 blocks over, in that blue bungalow with the rose bushes she fussed over every spring. I knew my toothbrush was there because I sometimes crashed after late-night panic attacks. But his brush? That made no sense. I stared at that toothbrush handle, bright green, the bristles frayed. I held it up like evidence and felt a jolt of betrayal shoot through me. I confronted him that evening while he was unloading groceries. He froze, cauliflower and apples at his feet. His face went pale, and he dropped a carton of eggs. They cracked on the tiled floor, yolk dripping into the grout lines. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. I pointed at the broken shells and said, "Mom's place." He swallowed, didn't meet my eyes, and just nodded. My chest felt like it was being crushed by every word unsaid. For days I cornered him, demanded to know why he was running to my mother's arms instead of holding me. He finally blurted out that after the miscarriage, he didn't know what to do. He loved me, but I had shut him out when the sadness swallowed me whole. According to him, I pushed him away at the worst possible moment, so he went to Mom because she knows how to take care of me. It wasn't until I saw them hugging in her garden that I realized he wasn't just looking for solace. They'd been seeing each other since our wedding. I remember the day I pieced it together. I walked into my mom's living room and saw them on the old floral couch, heads together like conspirators. Mom's hand was on his knee, his palm on her cheek. They looked guilty, but not sorry. It reminded me of a high school couple sneaking around behind their parents' backs. They scrambled apart when they saw me. Mom said she was helping him through a rough patch. Jason just stared at his sneakers. My legs gave out and I sank onto the carpet, mine collapsing like a house of cards. I packed a bag right then. I grabbed my laptop, my favorite hoodie, and the photo album from our first road trip. I left the rest, the crud parts, the stacks of baby clothes I'd pre-washed, the folded notes we'd left each other in the margins of calendars. I didn't care about any of it anymore. I drove away without looking back, the roads blurring until the neon signs of a diner pulled me in. I sat at the counter with a chocolate milkshake and stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the row of syrup bottles. I saw my bloodshot eyes and messy hair, someone who just lost everything they thought mattered. In the following weeks, I moved into a tiny studio above a record store downtown, my own sanctuary of dusty vinyl and dim lamps. I wrote in my journal every night, hashing out the betrayal in long, jumbled paragraphs. I couldn't sleep without reliving that image of them on the couch. I tried to call my mom, but hung up before she answered. I deleted Jason's number and refused to read any messages, even ones from our mutual friends telling me to give him a chance. A chance for what? To watch him slip away again. One evening, I bumped into him near the corner bakery. He was standing in line, holding a single red rose. When he saw me, he froze, then dropped the rose behind a display of baguettes. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last month. I walked past without a word. He called after me, but I kept going until I turned down a side street, heart pounding too hard to hear his apologies. Now I spend my days working at a coffee shop by the river, pouring lattes for strangers who don't know my story. The gentle clink of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine are more comforting than any words Jason or my mom ever spoke. I take evening walks along the water, watching the sunset paint the river in orange and purple. It's peaceful, but I still carry the ache of their betrayal. It's a steady throb, but it reminds me that I'm alive, that I can feel deeply. I haven't heard from him or my mom in weeks. I'm okay with that. I'm learning to fill the silence with my own voice, one that doesn't waver or shrink. Some nights I sit on the rooftop of my building and think about what I lost, our plans for a family, the future I believed in, and I let that grief wash over me. But when it's done, I look up at the sky and remind myself that I gave everything I had. If they couldn't stay, that's on them. There's no neat ending to this story. I'm not teaching a lesson or wearing a victory grin. I ended up with scars thicker than any lullaby. But every morning when I wake up and head out to catch the sunrise over the water, I get to choose who I am today. And that choice isn't defined by their betrayals. It's mine. I thought I had the perfect setup. A cozy house by the bay, a steady job at the local university, and Vanessa, my wife, who was smart and ambitious and always ready with a joke to cut the tension after a long day. We'd been together for 5 years before we decided to try couples therapy. Nothing dramatic, just a way to fine-tune our communication. I'd read about our therapist, Dr. Garza, in glowing faculty reviews. Empathetic, insightful, the kind of clinician who made you feel safe. I pictured us walking into her office hand in hand, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead. Instead, I found myself trapped in a twisted triangle where the person I trusted most and the person I paid to help us both turned on me in the same breath. We started sessions and lit on. I remember the first time I noticed that glance she shared with Dr. Garza just after I finished describing a fight we had over finances. Vanessa's eyes flickered to the couch edge where Dr. Garza sat, lips curved in that attentive half smile. I chalked it up to professional empathy until it happened again. Twice. 3 times. Each time I spoke. They exchanged those silent words I couldn't hear, but I felt the electricity in the room crackle. I mentioned it once. You two seem close. Vanessa laughed it off. You're imagining things, she said. But even as she spoke, I saw her shoulders tighten, and in that moment I felt like a fool for asking. Over the next months, sessions grew longer, straying from our original goals. Vanessa started meeting Dr. Garza alone for extra work, calling them check-ins I couldn't join. She said it was to explore her own issues with trust. I didn't push it, even when I spotted her car in the hospital parking lot on weekday afternoons. She always had an excuse, a staff meeting, a friend in crisis. I believed her, even though a knot in my gut kept tightening. In the evenings, Vanessa became distant. She'd stare at her phone, typing rapidly, then hid it under the pillow when I walked into the bedroom. We fell into a routine of silent dinners. 1 plate of pasta untouched, 1 plate half finished, and 1,000 unsaid words sitting between us. I tried reviving date nights, picnics on the bluff, movie marathons at home. But she'd agree once, then quietly cancel next time, citing exhaustion or paperwork deadlines. I started running out of excuses to believe her. The tipping point came one rainy Wednesday. I'd been swamped at the lab, analyzing data until my eyes felt gritty. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Dr. Garza's car parked behind mine. My pulse hit my throat. I ducked in the back seat and waited, listening to the rain drone on the roof. Vanessa pulled in 15 minutes later, slamming her door. They met under the porch light, bodies pressed close as though the storm was a private cocoon. I watched them from the windshield, thunder rolling behind me, a shape of betrayal unmistakable under that yellow glow. I confronted Vanessa that night in the kitchen, all fluorescent bulbs and shadows. She just stared at me, mouth open, like she'd been caught in a dream. When I asked if she'd been seeing Dr. Garza, her face went blank and then stony. Of course not, she said. That should have been it. Simple denial. But in the next breath, she turned and fled upstairs. The proof was soaked into my bones. Those stolen meetings, the way she bit her lip when his name was mentioned, the hidden texts I discovered, messages like "can't wait to see you" and "I need you." I called Dr. Garza's office the next morning, heart thudding. When I said I needed to cancel all appointments indefinitely, the receptionist hesitated. Dr. Garza mentioned you two were making so much progress. She didn't say anything about problems. I didn't know what to say. I hung up before I turned into a sobbing mess. That afternoon I went through her phone. I know it sounds desperate, but I was desperate. I found them. Photos from her DSLR, taken in her backyard, frozen moments of them wrapped around each other, filthy footprints on the therapy office carpet, selfies with glazed eyes leaning too close. There were voice notes labeled things like Saturday afternoon and 10 minutes at the park, all timestamped during hours Vanessa was supposed to be at home or at my side. I listened to one little clip where she whispered, "I love you," and his reply was so soft I could barely make it out. It might have been Dr. Garza's voice. My stomach lurched at the certainty. When I confronted them both, Dr. Garza launched into a lecture about boundaries and therapeutic transference, telling me I'd been too controlling, too insecure, and that Vanessa needed a healthy outlet for her feelings. I sat there, stunned by her audacity, while Vanessa watched me with eyes distant, as though she'd already checked out our marriage. They both painted me as the villain, weaving tales of how I criticized Vanessa too harshly, how I'd undermined her courage to break free from my negativity. It was grotesque, like acid eating away at every memory I had of our love. I left the office without a word, the rain slick on the sidewalk, my sneakers soaked through. I didn't look back. Later, I learned Dr. Garza's license got suspended when another client reported similar misconduct, but knowing she lost her career didn't fix what she did to me. Vanessa moved her things out while I was at work the next day. She left a note on the door. "I'm sorry. I need to figure out who I am without you." Even that sounded rehearsed. I stayed in the empty house for a week, sleeping on the couch where we first planned our future. I survived on takeout, staring at the walls we painted together, imagining I could scrub the guilt and betrayal off with a sponge. Friends dropped by, bringing sandwiches and hugs, but I kept the extra bedroom locked, as though their presence would fracture the silence even more. Eventually, I moved to a tiny studio in the next town over, trading waterfront views for a cramped loft above a bookstore. The landlord let me put up bookshelves and a hammock, and I filled the place with every novel I'd ever loved. When the nights felt too cold, I curled up between the pages of a familiar story and pretended I was anywhere but alone. It didn't solve anything, but it kept me from drowning. I see Vanessa sometimes from a distance, at the grocery store in her new apartment complex, pushing a cart full of bright vegetables. She looks over her shoulder, catches my eye, then turns away like she's embarrassed. I understand. I don't blame her for trying to escape or for wanting someone who told her she was a victim of my toxicity. But I also don't pity her. She chose that path. Some days I sit on the balcony with a mug of tea, watching the sun set over rusty rooftops. I think about the like I thought we have, how easily trust can be shattered when the two people you rely on most decide you're the enemy. And I think about how I'll rebuild my own sense of self, without her and without Dr. Garza twisting the truth into knots. There's no neat ending, no triumphant comeback. Just me, turning pages and learning to stand on my own again. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I lay on that narrow bed, heart pounding because I'd just signed consent forms for my left kidney to be removed. It was supposed to be a heroic moment, saving my fiance's sister, Claire, from dialysis and months of fatigue. I told Ben I'd do anything for his family, that I loved him so much I'd give up a chunk of myself if it meant he'd be happy. In truth, I only saw the bright future, our wedding a house full of laughter and maybe kids running around. Instead, I woke up to betrayal. Recovery sucked. Every breath felt like fire, every step wobbly and new. Claire stayed by my side for the first couple of days, spooning applesauce into my mouth, her eyes glistening with gratitude. Ben visited twice, balancing a tray of bland hospital food and a bouquet of daisies. He kissed my forehead, whispered that I was the best thing he'd ever done. I smiled, already feeling the extra weight in my abdomen where my organ used to be, proud of myself for being selfless. I thought that was love, giving until you had nothing left. I was wrong. When I got home, I was exhausted, skin pallid, hair thinning from the stress. I shuffled around our apartment in sweats, draped on the couch like a rag doll. Ben buzzed around, cooking soup, fetching ice packs, reminding me to take meds. It felt like the honeymoon phase of recovery, a temporary bubble. Claire bounced in next, bright-eyed, insisting on making smoothies and reorganizing my bookshelves. She made me laugh in that rare way she had, with a crooked smile and a sparkle in her eye that reminded me of summer nights at the lake. Ben glanced over at us as if he just noticed her for the first time. I noticed it too. Something in the way she's leaning forward when I cracked a joke. The way he lit up watching her stir the blender. I told myself it was the relief of health, that they were celebrating together after months of worry. But when Ben started disappearing on weekends to check in at Claire's apartment, I felt my chest tighten. He said he was concerned about her diet, that she needed encouragement to eat enough protein. I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and tried to trust him. Then came the invitations to help plan a thank you party for the hospital staff. Claire recruited me and Ben to pick out decorations, order cakes, and write thank you notes. We spent an entire Saturday in party supply stores, and I watched from the cart as they sampled cupcake flavors. Their heads bent close together, muttering about frosting textures, their laughter ringing like church bells, joyful, but cutting through my pride like a razor. I told myself I was overthinking. I was getting better, right? I deserved to stand aside and let them bond. It was during a late-night study session on the couch that I found the message threads. My phone buzzed with a notification from Claire's best friend, Erin, whom I barely knew beyond polite hellos at family gatherings. She texted Claire, "He's ready. Tonight at 9. You know the plan." My heart sank like a stone. I stared at the timestamp. 2:34 p.m. I clicked on the earlier messages. Planning check-ins, coordinating schedules. There were screenshots where Claire marked the optimal night for my physical therapy session, so Erin could slip me a sedative in my tea. They plotted to get rid of me. I felt my stomach drop. Betrayal burned through every vein. Not just from Claire, who I thought I was saving, but from Ben, who told me I was his hero. I'd literally given up part of myself for them, and they'd been plotting my downfall. I replayed every memory, Claire brushing my hair back after surgery, Ben's gentle kisses on my forehead, both of them murmuring how strong I was. All lies. They'd been telling each other stories about my selflessness while they set the trap. I wiped tears off my cheeks and felt rage bubble up. Angry at myself for trusting them, for thinking love meant sacrifice. When Ben got home that night, bleary-eyed from what he called an overnight support group with Claire, I confronted him in the kitchen. My voice trembled as I told him I'd seen the messages. He looked away, jaw tight, and his shoulders sagged. Before he could speak, Erin burst through the door, holding a bottle of sleeping pills. She tried to explain, but her words blurred into static. I heard her say it was about freedom, about moving on, how I'd be better off, at peace. I heard Ben say he wanted a fresh start with someone who could keep up with him. His words weren't even muffled. They were blunt, like he was reading from a script. I left that apartment with my IV kit swinging in a plastic bag. Every step down the hallway felt like I was tripping, but I kept moving. I dropped the bag by the stairwell trash and bolted to the street, rain slick on the pavement, neon lights reflecting off puddles. I didn't look back. I waved down a taxi and told the driver the nearest hospital. I wasn't going back there. I wasn't going anywhere near their conspiracy. Rehab took longer than that first hospital. My scar throbbed, a reminder of what I'd lost. I moved into a tiny studio of a laundromat, sharing walls with washers that clanged all night. I went to physical therapy every day, learning to trust my body again without fearing betrayal. I made new friends at PT, people who cheered when I nailed my exercises, who didn't have hidden agendas. I picked up old hobbies: watercolor painting, reading science fiction, baking bread. Each loaf was a small rebellion against the cold plots I left behind. Months later, I ran into Erin at a coffee shop. She looked unrecognizable without her usual entourage of co-conspirators. I didn't say a word. She tried to apologize, mumbling something about being young and stupid. I sipped my lot, the steam rising between us like a barrier. I let her words dissolve into the hum of espresso machines and turned away. I didn't need her forgiveness, and I sure as hell didn't want it. I never got a message from Ben or Claire. No explanation, no regret. I thought at first I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt a hollow ache where my trust used to be. But that ache taught me something important. I'd survive without them. I'd find people who valued me for all I gave, not for how easy I was to sacrifice. Now I work at a community arts center, teaching painting classes to kids on Saturday mornings. I spend evenings volunteering in an animal shelter, feeding dogs who never judge you for your past. My scar is still there, but it's smaller now, fading into the curve of my head. I sometimes catch my reflection in the window and see a stranger who gave away part of himself and lived to tell the tale. Love taught me lessons I never asked for. I learned that altruism can be weaponized, that the people you trust can tear you open just as easily as you offer them your heart. But I also learned that you can rebuild piece by piece and fill the cracks with strength and self-respect. Every morning I wake up in this little studio, the sunlight filtering through curtains I chose myself, and I remind myself that life goes on, even after the worst kind of betrayal. I'd never thought my family's Christmas dinner would feel like a scene from a bad movie. The tree was up early that year, bright lights tangled around pine branches, shiny baubles catching the glow of candles. I walked into the living room carrying a tray of cranberry tartlets, humming a carol I barely knew. The air smelled like pine and cinnamon, and laughter echoed from the dining room where my high school sweetheart, Alyssa, was already perched on a stool beside my dad. I thought I was walking into warmth. Instead, I stepped into a trap. Alyssa and I had been inseparable since junior year. We passed notes in history class, shared earbuds on the bus, and dreamed up futures where we both got out of our small town and found somewhere bigger. My dad owned the local hardware store, an old brick building with green trim, where Alyssa worked part-time after school. I thought it was sweet how she'd get home at 6, wipe sawdust off her jeans, then swing by my house to say hi before heading home. My trust in them felt as solid as the concrete floor in that store. That December afternoon, the kitchen buzzed with activity. Mom was basting the turkey, Aunt Carol was chopping veggies, and Dad was at the kitchen island carving a maple wood ornament with a tiny chisel. He always gave me one each year. I still have them all, tucked in a shadow box. I set the tartlets down and smiled at him. He winked, nodded toward Alyssa, and I felt that familiar little flutter in my chest, thinking she was there just for me. I pulled out a chair, ready to sit between them at the head of the table. My mom called everyone in to sit. The table was decked with red tablecloth, candles in mason jars, and my grandmother's china plates with holly motifs. We said grace, passed dishes around, and I started ladling gravy onto my plate when I noticed my dad's phone light up. He slipped away to the hallway, screen glowing bright. Alyssa nudged her elbows against me, asking if I wanted wine. I shook my head. I had a biology exam tomorrow. She laughed, rushed her hair behind her ear, and leaned closer to my dad's empty seat, as if she were waiting for him. I scooped up some stuffing, but then I saw it. A text preview on my dad's phone, which was face up on the console. The words, "Can't wait to see you," stood out. I froze, heart pounding. Dad's phone bounced with another message. "Meet me where we first kissed." My mind raced. Their first kiss? That should have been between me and Alyssa, under the bleachers at halftime. I took a breath, balanced my plate, and walked down the hallway. I snatched his phone off the console and scrolled through the messages in a panic. There were dozens of them. Flirty emojis, plans for late night after closing the store, even a selfie of Alyssa in my dad's arms, her head against his chest. I felt like someone had jabbed an icicle through my heart. I flipped the phone around, and there they were in the frame. Alyssa's eyes closed, her lips curved up in a soft smile, my dad's hand at her waist. The floor tilted beneath me, and I held onto the wall to keep from falling into a broken puddle of disbelief. I stormed back into the dining room and threw the phone onto the table. Turkey and gravy splattered across the table runner. Napkins flew, forks clattered. Everyone stared. My mom's face turned pink, Aunt Carol gasped, and my dad looked like someone had asked him to explain quantum physics on live TV. Alyssa's cheeks went pale. She rose from her seat, knocking her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. I stood over the table, voice shaking, accusing them both in a way that felt too loud, too shattered. My dad tried to say something, anything, but all I heard was his throat clearing. He stammered that I'd misunderstood, that those messages were innocent. But Mom stared at him like he'd become a stranger in her own home. Alyssa backed up against the wall, arms hugging herself, eyes fixed on her shoes. I grabbed the chair I had vacated, thrust it into the table as if it could separate truth from lies, then turned and ran out plate and pencil carving gift still untouched on the table. Outside, the December air hit me like a wave. My breath came in ragged puffs, freezing on my eyelashes. I punched the dashboard of our car parked in the driveway, feeling the sting in my knuckles. I wanted them both to admit it, to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. I punched again, harder, until pain soaked through my gloves. I sank against the hood and let tears trace icicles down my cheeks. Hours later, I trudged back inside, snow crunching under my boots, ready to face the ruin. The dining room was a disaster. Cranberry sauce spilled, candles melted into the tablecloth, and plates shoved to one side. Dad sat alone at the head of the table, shoulders slumped, head in his hands. Mom hovered by the stove, staring into space. Aunt Carol and cousins left in a silence that felt like betrayal, like everyone had chosen a side except me. I walked to the table, stared at the empty chairs where they'd sat. It should have been me and Alyssa together, laughing at old jokes, passing potatoes. Instead, it was silence and cold. I didn't say a word. I reached out and picked up one of the ornaments, my pinecone carving from 5 years ago. I held it tight until my knuckles went white. Then I let it fall onto the table, like I was dropping a piece of my past onto shards of glass. After that night, I moved out of our shared apartment above the hardware store. I couldn't stay anywhere near the place where I had believed in forever. I rented a small room downtown with walls painted bright blue to remind myself there's still color in the world. I packed up Alyssa's letters, my dad's ornaments, the earbuds we shared, and drove away without stopping to look back. In the weeks that followed, I quit the part-time job at Dad's store. I found work stocking shelves at a bookstore where the only whispers are pages turning and the scent of paper. I spent Saturdays at the town pond, feeding ducks with stale breadcrumbs, letting the ripples fade my anger into calm. I saw Alyssa's face on social media sometimes, her hair now the color my dad liked, her captions full of longing emojis, like she was living my story without the weight of truth. My dad tried calling. His number flashed on my phone until I blocked it. I didn't want to hear apologies that tasted like coal, promises that felt like knots in my throat. I missed the man I thought he was, the steady hand that taught me how to use a hammer and build birdhouses. But I couldn't repair what they'd torn apart. Months later, I walked into the bookstore one afternoon and saw a group of college kids laughing by the philosophy section. I shelved a stack of new arrivals down a quiet corner and cracked open a battered copy of my favorite novel. As I read, a sense of peace settled in my chest. Betrayal had hollowed me out, but it had also cleared space for something new, someone stronger, someone who wouldn't be fooled again. One January morning, I went back to the hardware store to pick up my old ornaments from Dad's workshop. I knocked on the door, heart pounding like it might burst. He opened it, eyes red, hands trembling. He held out a small plastic bag with my carvings inside. He tried to speak, but I shook my head and walked away. I didn't look back. Now, whenever I feel a chill from one of those winter nights, I remind myself I'm more than a broken ornament. I have a story still being written, with chapters that start in bookstore aisles, not in crooked smiles under Christmas lights. I tuck my scars into the pages I read, and I keep moving forward, letting the ripples of betrayal fade into new beginnings. I never expected a broken heart to taste like stale beer and cold pizza crust. It was sophomore year at our rundown campus house, the kind of place with peeling paint and a bathroom that smelled like old socks. My roommate Claire had just started dating Liam, this guy from the jiu-jitsu club who wore tank tops and had a tattoo on his forearm. I watched them fall in for each other. Late night study dates, hand-holding at parties, the way her laugh lit up the dingy living room. And then one night, everything exploded. Claire and I had been friends since freshman orientation. We bonded over shared nightmares about midterms and our mutual fear of public speaking. When she met Liam, I saw how happy she was, like she'd found someone who didn't mind her messy hair or her bad cooking experiments. Meanwhile, my own love life was a joke. I'd just been dumped by my first serious girlfriend, and my self-esteem had flatlined. I felt invisible next to Claire's shiny new romance. That's when the idea sneaked into my head. I was flooded with anger at her for moving on so fast, at him for making her forget about me. I wanted to hurt her back to remind her that I met her too. Liam started showing up at our place with takeout boxes, talking my ear off about his training sessions. He was kind in that infuriating way, always checking if I'd eaten, if I was sleeping enough. I knew he wasn't interested in me, but in my fragile mood, I convinced myself things could change. It happened after a party. The whole house was trashed, empty bottles rolling under couches, sticky footprints on the floor. Claire had gone to her friend's birthday, leaving me on the couch with Liam. I was drunk enough to think I was brave, convinced enough that revenge felt justified. I leaned in, kissed him, and for a second he froze. Then he kissed me back. It was electric, even though I could taste beer and regret on his lips. That night was a blur of whispered apologies and tangled limbs. I remember crawling to my bedroom afterward, pulling the sheets over my head, heart racing like mad. The next morning, Claire came home early. She flopped onto the couch, humming, and asked if I knew where Liam was. I shrugged, my throat so tight I couldn't speak. He walked in then, looking guilty, trying to dodge her questions about last night. They argued softly, with her voice shaking and him scratching the back of his neck. I pretended to be asleep. After that, everything changed. Claire grew distant. She stopped asking me about my day, stopped sharing her lunch or borrowing my notes. She buried herself in classes and student council meetings. Liam started sleeping on our couch, saying he and Claire needed space. The house felt like a ticking time bomb. I could see Liam's regret. He'd be quiet in the kitchen, staring at the backsplash as if it held the answers. But whenever I tried to apologize, he'd shake his head and look away. A month later, Claire called me at dawn. Her voice was flat, and I still remember the chill that ran down my spine. She told me she missed her period and was late by weeks. She was going to get a test. I couldn't breathe. I fumbled on my desk, grabbed a glass of water, and tried to steady myself. She said she'd keep me posted. I hung up before she could ask if I was okay. When she told me the test was positive, I felt a puncture wound in my chest. I still didn't know the exact date she conceived, but I guessed a night with Lamb landed right in that window. I wanted to confess everything, to clear the air, but the words clamped shut in my throat. I didn't tell her, not then, not ever. Instead, I watched her excitement grow. Pastel onesies, baby name lists, ultrasound appointments. She picked out a crib online and sent me the link, asking if I thought it fit our living room. I told her it was perfect. I saw the change in Liam, too. He started sleeping in her room again, texted her during lectures, came home with sushi and flowers. He never mentioned that night, never looked at me the same. I resented him for giving her what I'd taken, and I hated myself for letting it happen. The guilt gnawed at me, but fear kept me silent. What if it wasn't my baby? What if I was wrong? Even when Liam and Claire announced they were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment near campus, I stayed quiet. Summer break came, and the house emptied. I spent days wandering the empty rooms, remembering parties and pizza nights, tracing the memories of their laughter. Claire came back twice to pack her things. She showed me the tiny pink blanket she'd bought, said she wanted everything perfect for her little one. I hugged her then, felt her warmth, and my mind screamed to spill everything. Spill it right there in the middle of the living room, amid the packing boxes. But I stayed mute, kissed her cheek, told her I couldn't wait to meet the baby. Fall rolled around. Classes started again, and I tried to live my own life. I joined a photography club, took pictures of falling leaves on campus, started seeing a guy in my literature class who made me laugh. For a while, I felt like I was coming back to myself. Then at the start of my junior year, I had a text from Claire. She had the baby, a girl, born just after midnight on September 12, and they'd named her Riley. My blood ran cold. Riley, my name on Claire's birth certificate that year, the first name Dad almost named me before Mom insisted on something more conventional. I stared at the text, reading those words over and over. I felt the world collapse into a single beam of light shining on my darkest secret. Riley was my name, my big. The proof that the night I thought was just revenge had consequences no one could have imagined. I stood outside the lecture hall, phone trembling in my hand. I thought about running to Claire, confessing everything. I thought about Liam's face, the regret in his eyes, the way he looked at Claire when she held that blanket. But I didn't move. The parking lot was full of students heading to class, often wind whipping their scarves around. My mind was a storm of shame and heartbreak. That afternoon, I skipped lectures and fled to the photography darkroom. I opened the enlarger, loaded blank paper, and found myself staring at grainy negatives of empty benches and fallen leaves. I watched the image develop in the tray, the captured light creeping into the white space. For the first time, I let tears mix with the fixer solution. I realized that I'd changed things forever, that some mistakes you can't undo even if you spill the truth. I haven't told Claire or Liam yet. Sometimes I think I will when the guilt gets too heavy to carry. Other times, I worry that confessing will ruin everything for that little girl who deserves a happy life. I take pictures of strangers now, capturing moments that don't belong to me, keeping my distance. I live with the secret, with the weight of Riley's name echoing in my mind. Every so often, I drive past their apartment building. I see the window where a pink blanket flutters against the breeze, and I feel both drawn and repelled. I think about knocking, saying what I haven't been brave enough to say. But I turn the wheel and drive away, him already on the passenger seat to capture whatever comes next. Because the only thing I'm sure of is that life moves forward, even when you've broken the rules in ways you never imagined. It started when Megan suggested we accept dinner invitations from our friends Sarah and Tom. They lived in that old clapboard house by the lake, the one with the wraparound porch and wind chimes that tinkled whenever a breeze came through. I thought it would be fun, home-cooked meals, good company, laughter drifting over the water. Instead, I ended up watching her betray me, bite by bite, meal by meal. At first, everything felt normal. We'd pile into our beat-up hatchback and roll down the windows to smell of pine and fresh-baked bread. Meg would chatter about her week, projects at her design job, gossip about coworkers, while I tried not to nod off in the passenger seat. Sarah always greeted us at the door with that warm hug, and Tom poured wine like he'd been waiting just for me. We'd talk about movies, politics, planning a joint vacation next summer. It was all perfectly ordinary until Megan started staying late to help Sarah clean up after dinner. I didn't think much of it at first. Women bond in kitchens, right? I'd rinse dishes and stack them in the laundry room sink, the hum of the washer drowning out my own doubts. But then Megan began wearing that perfume, the one that smelled like jasmine and something sweeter I couldn't place. She'd walk in the door after dinner, the fragrance trailing behind her like an invitation. She'd kiss me on the cheek and whisper, "Long night," before disappearing into the bathroom to change. I tried to ask what was up, but she'd just smile and say, "You'd be exhausted too if you cooked as much as I did." The turning point came the night I decided to surprise her. I ducked off the bus to stop early and jogged the remaining blocks to Sarah and Tom's house, my heart hammering with excitement. I pictured Megan's face when I showed up with flowers and thanked them for having us over. Then I'd whisk her home and we'd laugh about how I got lost in the woods behind their place. I crept around back, slipped through the side gate, and peeked through a window. Megan was there all right, standing close to Sarah in the kitchen, her hand on Sarah's waist. Tom leaned against the counter, watching them with that look Sarah reserved for private moments. They were talking in low voices, faces inches apart, eyes bright. Megan laughed, that full laugh that used to be mine to hear. I felt a punch to the gut, the kind that makes you stagger back a step. I stumbled onto the porch and the boards creaked under my weight. Inside, Megan spun around. Her eyes went wide, and Sarah jerked back as if she'd been caught in a lie. Tom dropped his wine glass onto the counter so hard it cracked, but he didn't seem surprised. Megan's face flickered between guilt and anger. I wanted to yell, to storm in and demand they explain, but my legs felt like concrete. Instead, I turned and ran down their driveway until the headlights of my car blurred past me. I fumbled for the keys, ripped the door open, and sped home with the radio blasting. That week was a haze of sleepless nights and cold showers. Megan texted me 50 times, calling me silly and paranoid. She said Sarah had just been upset about a job offer and needed support. Tom was worried about his own work stress, she claimed, and it was all innocent. I tried to believe her. I looked for excuses. Maybe they were working on a joint project. Maybe they'd been acting awkward because I barged in. But every time Megan touched me, I felt a spike of disgust. I started following them in a safer, more controlled way. I dropped by in the afternoon to grab a book, then watched through the window as Tom and Megan shared that same jasmine scent, as she leaned into his chest like they were the only two people on Earth. One evening I saw Sarah slip out back with them, and I drove off before they noticed. My chest ached with every mile I put between us. Finally, I gathered my courage and confronted her. It was a Friday night, and she was lighting candles in our living room, trying to set a romantic mood. I sat her down on the couch, heart racing. I asked her point blank if she was sleeping with Sarah and Tom. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Her lips trembled, and for a moment I saw the flicker of the truth in her eyes. Then she blinked it away and said, "You're overreacting. You've been so distant lately." She wrapped her arms around me, but pulled free. "I saw you," I said. "I saw you in the kitchen. You said you loved me, and you lied." She burst into tears and slammed the coffee table with her fist. Fragments of candle wax flew. She shouted that she felt unseen, that our marriage was stagnant, that she deserved more than my half-hearted attention. I laughed, a bitter sound I hardly recognized. "So you gave me half of you," I snapped. She refused to admit the affair. She painted me as the bad guy, jealous, controlling, selfish. She said I'd always been wrapped up in my job, that I never noticed her need for connection. It was so surreal, listening to her twist the story like I was the one at fault. I grabbed my coat and left. I didn't know where I was going, but it felt better than breathing the same air as her lies. I spent a week crashing at a buddy's place, sleeping on an air mattress that deflated every night. I hid my phone, ignored her calls and texts, and ate nothing but takeout dumplings at midnight. After a few days, I went through their trash bins behind Sarah and Tom's house, hoping for proof, for any shred of apology or admission. All I found were empty wine bottles and crumpled napkins. No camera phones, no letters, nothing but wasted dinners and broken trust. When I finally returned home, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry you feel this way. I hope you find happiness." That was it. No explanation, no goodbye, just words that stabbed me deeper than any confession. I packed a bag that night, my guitar, the little photo album from our honeymoon, and a sweater Megan knitted for me last Christmas. I locked the door behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt the door click shut on a life I no longer recognized. I moved into a studio apartment downtown, above a used record store. The owner let me pay rent in installments, trading my old records for space on the wall. I spent nights listening to late 90s alt-rock, the songs making me feel less alone. Sometimes I walk by Sarah and Tom's house and see lights flicker inside. I imagine Megan laughing with them under that porch, Jasmine drifting through the screen door. It still hurts, but it's a dull ache now, a remnant of what I once thought love could be. I started writing again, little poems about betrayal and rebuilding, scribbling lines in a worn notebook. I volunteer at a community center teaching art to kids, and their unfiltered joy reminds me love can still exist without promises broken. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone the same way again, but I know I'll keep trying. Because if these Tuesdays taught me anything, it's that some meals come with a side of truth, no matter how hard you want to swallow the lies. I'd never thought a Tuesday morning could feel like the end of the world, but that was before I walked into our sunlit kitchen and saw my daughter Mia standing frozen in front of the cereal cabinet. The light from the window fell in stripes across her face, and something in her eyes made me drop my coffee mug. It cracked against the tile, and I felt every fragment of my heart shatter right then and there. Mia came out to us last summer, in a whirlwind of trembling words and a voicemail that she played for me and my husband Jesus one evening. We'd sat on the porch swing, the cicadas droning overhead, and I nodded so hard tears almost fell. I told her I loved her no matter what, that her happiness was all I ever wanted. Jesus squeezed my hand, smiling like he'd been waiting for that moment. We celebrated with ice cream and late-night movies, promising we'd always have her back. Over the next few months, our house felt lighter. Mia painted rainbows on the front steps and asked me to help her choose a new wardrobe. Jesus came home early from work to watch her favorite shows, joked about planning a big reveal party for their friends. He poured more effort into making our meals special, saved up for a little weekend getaway to the coast. In my head, everything was perfect. Then last Tuesday happened. I was making pancakes in my favorite blue apron, humming along with the radio when I heard a low buzzing from Jesus' phone. It was on the counter, screen face up, so I glanced over and saw a notification from Matchmaster, his dating app. Matchmaster was where Mia had met her ex-girlfriend, Lena. I laughed out loud, thinking it was one of those spam accounts. Jesus peeked around the corner, hair mussed from sleep, and I joked, looking for breakfast dates without me. He laughed, reached across the island to grab the phone, and that's when I saw the profile. A man named Marco, tall, dark hair, eyes the same shade as Jesus's. Under About Me, it said, I value honesty, good coffee, and Sunday morning cuddles. Under Interests, cooking with a partner, family brunches, heartfelt apologies when I screw up. I froze, spatula mid-flip. Jesus' hand hovered over the phone, and he smiled. It was the kind of harmless grin you might give if you just won a small prize, except it made my chest hurt like someone had thrown a punch. Hey, I wasn't looking, he said. He swiped it closed and set the phone down. I watched him, felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I wanted to laugh to think it was a prank or a glitch, but something in his eyes, guilty, guarded, told me this was real. I tried to breathe normally as I slid a plate of pancakes in front of Mia. She looked at me, eyebrows knitting, as though she sensed the tension. I asked her about school, about her art project, anything to keep my voice steady. She poured syrup over her stack, silent. When she looked up, her green eyes were glossy. Mom, she said softly, can we talk later? I nodded, watched her head off after throwing her backpack over her shoulder. As the front door slammed, I turned to Jesus. He stood there, shirt half untucked, apron strings tied around his waist like a noose. I said, what makes you think you can be Marco on the same site my daughter used? My voice echoed off the cabinets. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the floorboards. It's not what it looks like, he started. I snatched up his phone and tapped into the app. Dozens of messages between Marco and Lena talking about our secret, planning dinner dates under fake names. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through lines like, I can't stop thinking about you, and see you tonight at Luna's Bistro. Luna's was the small cafe down the street where we'd all gone as a family. I clicked on a photo Leah had sent. A selfie with a wine glass, and next to her, a man who looked so much like Jesus it made me sick. I threw the phone at him and it hit the tile with a thud. He closed his eyes as though bracing himself. I screamed, you did this to her, and pointed at the door where Mia had left. You told me we were her safe place. You sold her trust for secret dates with her ex. Jesus ran a hand through his hair. He whispered, she needed someone after she left him. In my confusion, I realized he meant Lena had broken up with Mia when she moved away for college. Mia hadn't told us right away, and he'd stepped in deciding to help Lena heal. He said he never meant to hurt our daughter, that he fell for Lena's vulnerability and loneliness. My hands shook so badly I could barely stand. He tried to reach for me, but I slapped his hand away. I bolted out of the kitchen, slammed the front door behind me, and stumbled down the sidewalk to the park bench where I had once rocked Mia when she was a baby. I sat there in disbelief as the sky lightened with dawn. I replayed every moment, Jesus wiping Mia's tears when her classes got hard, offering to drive her to the train station when she visited Lena. I thought it was love for our child. It was betrayal. Later, when I got home, the house was empty. Jesus had left a note on the table. I messed up. I'll move out. I love you both. It was so short. Just those sentences on a small sticky pad. I peeled it off the wood and crumpled it in my fist. I wandered through the empty rooms, feeling like a ghost in my own life. His cologne still lingered on his pillow, and I wanted to rip the sheets off the mattress and burn them. Mia came home after school, and she saw me in the living room, curled in a blanket on the couch, half awake. She sat beside me without a word, shoved her feet under the blanket, and held my hand. For the first time since Tuesday, I let the tears come. Over the next days, we sat at the kitchen table for hours, Mia wrapped in my arms, as she told me how she found out. She said she got a message from Marco on Matchmaster, complimenting a painting she posted online. She replied with confusion, and he sent his photo before revealing it was her dad. She said she felt sick, that her first love's betrayal cut her deeper coming from her own father. I apologized to her over and over for not seeing it, for not protecting her. She said she forgave me but needed time. I told her I'd talk to a lawyer about separating from Jesus, custody or whatever she needed to feel safe. She nodded, leaning her head against my shoulder, and for a moment we sat in silence, the strains of our broken family echoing through the empty kitchen. That night I slept in the guest room, the sheets stiff and folded. I woke up to the early light and packed a bag, my favorite mug, a jar of coffee, Mia's sketchbook. I left the keys on the counter and a note on the fridge. I'm sorry it came to this. I hope he finds his way back someday. I love you, Mom. Then I drove to pick Mia up from art class, and we headed north to stay with my sister until we figured out what came next. I don't know if Jesus will come back. I don't know if our family can ever stitch itself together after this. But sitting in the car with Mia, holding her hand as she sketches the passing fields, I know one thing. I'll always protect her, even when the person who was supposed to love her most turned out to be the one who hurt her deepest. It was midsummer in Portland, the kind of heat that makes the Willamette River look like it's melting. I'd flown in from Denver for the rehearsal dinner, ready to toast to new beginnings. Jessica, my best friend's bride-to-be, looked radiant in that off-the-shoulder dress Maria had picked out for her. I thought, this is perfect. Then everything unraveled. The rehearsal went off without a hitch. My friend Tom gave a shaky speech, warning us all to keep our drinks level, and everyone laughed as we clinked glasses under those twinkly patio lights. Afterward, Tom steered off to chat with his groomsmen, and Jessica pulled me aside. She held 2 cocktails, lemongrass martinis with that little green leaf garnish, and asked if I wanted to sneak off for just one more. I hesitated. I could feel that tingle in my veins, the one that comes right before you make a terrible decision. But I owed her this night. She was the one person who'd moved halfway across the country to build her life with Tom, and I'd been too busy scrambling my own career to notice how happy she seemed. I whispered one and followed her into the dark. We found the side alley behind the restaurant, brick walls crawling with ivy, the air smelling like summer rain on concrete. She handed me her martini and I took a sip, cool, fragrant, sharp. She laughed at something I said, that easy laugh I'd missed when she was gone. Our shoulders brushed. Suddenly there was no rehearsal dinner, no guest list, no expectation that we were just best friends. There was only that moment charge, and too late to step back. We didn't talk about the rules. We didn't say, this can never happen again. We kissed, first a peck, then with our arms around each other, like we were trying to erase the world. Her perfume hit me in a wave. Amber and something subtler, like warm skin. I knew it was wrong. I could picture Tom waiting across the table under patio lights, his eyes bright with nervous excitement. But I couldn't stop. We ducked into the back room of the alley, the one with that old dumpster and graffiti hearts, and we gave into a night that felt stolen and real at the same time. Afterward, I lay on her bed in that little guest room above her apartment, tangled in the sheets, the lemon-tart taste of regret on my tongue. Jessica sat at the edge of the bed, buttoning her shirt. Neither of us could look at the other. I wanted to apologize, to ask if she'd regret it, to say anything that might untangle a knot in my chest. But she just shook her head and whispered, we'll deal with it tomorrow. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my dreams were full of Tom's face, his smile, the way he frowned at my jokes if he knew what I'd done. Morning came too fast. I woke to the sun slicing through Venetian blinds, and Jessica was gone. No note, nothing but a faint scent of her perfume where she'd been sitting. I dressed in the dark, stomach churning as I threw on my clothes. I left her apartment without knocking, headed down those wooden steps and out into the drowning summer heat. I grabbed a cold brew at the corner cafe and stared at the swirling ice, trying to will the panic in my veins to calm. The wedding was on a small hill overlooking the river. I took my assigned seat beside a cousin I barely knew, pretended I'd sprained my ankle so I could get away from the rehearsal party. When Jessica appeared, she looked as if she'd swallowed the sunrise, white dress flowing, veil catching the breeze. I felt my throat close up. Tom was at the end of the aisle, beaming, scanning the crowd until he found her. The moment she reached the top, he swallowed hard, blinked twice like he was seeing her for the first time. I wanted to shout stop, but my voice was gone. They exchanged vows about trust and honesty. I sat there as a stranger, pretending to wipe a tear from my eye. I watched Jessica's shoulders lift as she said, "I do," and Tom's mouth quirk like he was about to laugh. When they shared that first kiss as a married couple, I grabbed the edge of my chair so hard my knuckles whitened. During the reception, I stayed at the back of the room, nursing a glass of sparkling water. Tom danced with his new in-laws. Jessica drifted from table to table, hugging aunts and waving at friends. At one point, she caught my eye. I swiveled my head and looked away, but I saw her mouth the words I couldn't read. "Are you okay?" I lifted my hand like I had a cramp. She gave a slow nod and moved on. I felt my chest twist, as though I'd given her the lie of safety when we both knew there was no safety net now. Late that night, when the DJ was packing up and aunties were checking their phones for a morning flight, Jessica slipped outside. I followed her to that same ivy-covered wall where I'd kissed her the night before. She leaned against the brick, pulling at her veil. "You did this," she said, voice low. "You ruined her day." I shook my head, but I knew she was right. I opened my mouth to say sorry again, but she cut me off. "He knows," she whispered. My whole world tilted. "Tom knows?" I asked, heart hammering. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "He said he saw me talking to you by the alley. He asked who you were, and I told him we were practicing our reading for the ceremony." She swallowed, straightened her shoulders. He knew and he trusted me. I stared at her, dumbfounded. She'd let him think we were rehearsing scripture, rehearsing lines, while we were replaying that stolen moment in the alley. She'd carried that secret for nearly 24 hours, and he'd accepted it. I felt like I'd been punched again, right in the gut. We didn't say much after that. I held her hand for a second, then let go. She went back inside, straightened the skirt of her dress, and slid back into the party like nothing had happened. I trudged to my car in the parking lot, head swimming with questions. Why forgive? How could he love her that much? Did he hate me more for knowing or for not knowing? I drove through the empty streets, radio off, thinking about the weight of unspoken truths. I stopped at a diner near the airport, ordered a slice of cherry pie, and sat there until sunrise. I rehearsed what I'd say at brunch with Jessica the next morning, but every apology sounded empty. In the end, I left with a crumpled napkin and an empty coffee cup. Back at the guest house, I packed my suitcase in silence. A knock on the door, and there she was, Jessica, in a simple dress that matched mine for my own wedding 5 years ago. She handed me a letter. I opened it and read Tom's words. "She's my person. We all make mistakes. I forgive her, and if you're ever in Denver, come visit." I folded the letter, placed it on the nightstand, and walked out into the haze of morning. I didn't know what would happen next for them, for me, for the delicate web of friendship and marriage woven that week. All I knew was that forgiveness can hide beneath the glossiest smiles, and sometimes the biggest wedding gift is a secret you never have to witness. I don't know if Jesus will come back. I don't know if our family can ever stitch itself together after this. But sitting in the car with Mia, holding her hand as she sketches the passing fields, I know one thing: I'll always protect her, even when the person who was supposed to love her most turned out to be the one who hurt her deepest. Walking into the campus cafe at noon felt like stepping into a time warp. The place was buzzing with students cramming for finals, but all I could see was his face on my phone's newsfeed. Mark Thompson, my professor, my mentor, the guy who'd spent months dismantling my thesis and rebuilding it into a best-selling book, was now engaged to my older sister. It hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I swallowed hard, set my coffee down, and tried to remember how I'd gotten here. It started 2 years ago, freshman spring, when I took Intro to Creative Nonfiction. Mark Thompson was legendary for his brutal yet brilliant feedback. He made me rip apart my first draft of essays until there was nothing left, then showed me how to put it back stronger. When he offered me a research assistant spot to help him write his memoir about Appalachian coal towns, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I moved my life into that cramped office above the English department. Stacks of yellow legal pads, mismatched coffee mugs on the windowsill, the musty smell of long afternoons, and old paper. We'd spend nights arguing over chapter structure, laughing about how neither of us could spell onomatopoeia without spell check. He'd rant about the publishing industry, and I'd sneak in jokes when he turned his back. His excitement when his agent called, his groans when he got another request for revisions. They felt like shared victories and defeats. When the book finally hit the shelves, I felt like I'd given birth alongside him. My name was in the acknowledgments to my brilliant research assistant, and I kept that copy on my desk like a trophy. But after the launch party, life got weird. I stopped hearing from him. Emails went unanswered, office hours empty. I sent a draft of my senior thesis for feedback and got nothing. I waited in that same office, staring at my drafts, convinced he'd show up at any moment with his signature wry grin ready to dive in. He never came. I called the department office, only to be told he'd taken a sabbatical overseas. No forwarding address, no farewell note. I felt abandoned, like a student ghosted by the one person who'd believed in my writing. I graduated that summer, walking across the stage with my head half empty, expecting him to clap in the front row. Instead, the seat was empty. I moved home to help my family with the bakery my dad ran, teaching me crusts and fillings since I was 10. I poured myself into pastries, the rhythm of kneading dough and frosting cupcakes grounding me. Yet every morning when I chopped blueberries or melted chocolate, I wondered what Mark Thompson would say about the narrative arc of my blueberry streusel muffins. Fast forward to last week, I was scrolling through the local news app while waiting for my shift to start, and there he was, Mark Thompson, grinning beside my sister, Jenna, in a glossy engagement announcement. The headline said, "Professor Thompson engaged to local tech entrepreneur." I stared at the photo, her arm looped through his, both of them holding champagne flutes, the city skyline behind them. My sister, my kid sister, who'd always thought my academic world was boring, standing next to him like they'd planned it for years. My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Jenna texted me from upstairs. "Did you see?" I forced out a simple "yeah" and told her I'd be there in a minute. I wiped my hands on my apron, ducked out the back door, and made my way to her loft. Her smile was bright, but her eyes flickered with nerves. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said, handing me the newspaper clipping. Her voice shook when she said she'd met him at a book signing for his memoir last fall. He'd moved here for research trips. They'd bumped into each other at coffee shops, and somehow late-night texts turned into weekend brunches. It sounded innocent, even sweet, until I remembered the months I'd gone radio silent, waiting for his responses. I couldn't look at her without seeing the old wooden table in his office, strewn with my notes and his red pen scrawling corrections. I remembered how he'd called my thesis "a voice that deserves to be heard," and how I believed him. Now I felt like a fool. Jenna noticed the shift in my face and asked if I was okay. I nodded, swallowed a lump in my throat, and said congratulations through clenched teeth. That night, under our childhood quilt in my old bedroom, I posted on our family group chat. "Congrats, Mark and Jenna." My dad replied with heart emojis. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the comment bowl. Part of me wanted to type "thank you for ghosting me," but the rest of me shut up, closed the app, and let the silence fill the room. The next morning, flour on my fingertips and oven heat in my face, I realized I couldn't work under that roof anymore. I walked into the living room where Dad was rolling dough and Mom was humming carols, baking ahead for Valentine's Day. I told them I needed a break, that I was heading back to campus for some readings and maybe the library. They nodded, eyebrows raised, but didn't question me. I grabbed my laptop, left it open where I'd been drafting a short story about family secrets, and slipped out the front door. Back on campus the next day, I walked past the lit windows of the English building, saw empty chairs in the seminar room, the ghost of where I and Mark used to sit. I went to the Student Center Cafe, ordered a moksha, and set up my laptop. I opened my short story draft and tried to write, but every word tasted like ash. That's when I saw him. He was at the counter ordering a black coffee, hair a little grayer, shoulders slumped forward like he carried the weight of regret. My breath caught. He turned and locked eyes with me. Time stopped. I wanted to storm away, to demand an explanation, to ask why he deserted me, why he let me believe our work meant something real. Instead, I did nothing. I watched him pick up his cup, and head toward the door. I followed him out. He didn't see me until we were on the sidewalk. He stopped, and I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Why?" I said, voice cracking. "Why disappear?" He looked older, tired, like the applause from that book launch had worn off into silence. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I was dealing with something I couldn't share," he said. "It wasn't about you or your work. I'm sorry I left you hanging." His silence was thick before he added, "Meeting your sister gave me something I didn't know I needed. I owe you both an apology." I stared at him, feeling the anger and hurt twisting my guts. "I've moved on," he said, "but I never stopped thinking about the drafts we worked on." I wanted to believe him to fight the urge to throw his words back in his face. Then he asked if I considered coffee sometime just to talk. I clenched my jaw. College friendships, family ties, late-night manuscript sessions, it all felt tangled up now in this moment. I took a breath, let out a slow laugh. "I don't know what that would even look like," I said. "You left me when I needed you, and now you're engaged to my sister." My voice softened, cracked. "I need time." He nodded, sorrow in his eyes. "I get that. If you ever want to talk about anything, I'll be here." I turned and walked away, a lapel of my jacket catching on a bramble. I paused, pulled free, and stepped forward. Words tumbled around in my head like half-formed drafts. I wasn't sure if I'd ever trust him again, or if our stories would ever be the same. But as I rounded the corner, I felt a flicker of something. Relief? Maybe, or the start of a new draft I couldn't yet see.